We're live.
We're live. What is up, everybody? Welcome from every continent. We've got people tuning in, Dustin. I'm looking at the numbers right now. We are worldwide. This is the non-corporate network. You are tuned in to Entreprenews. My name is Chaz Vandemotter,
Dustin Trout.
and we are ready to bring you the heaviest hitting small business headlines of the day, Wednesday. I haven't even looked at the date yet, Dustin. What
Blur's
is it? The
Day.
7th?
It's
Blur's
Blur's Day.
Day. When you're grinding, you forget what day of the week it is. This is Entreprenews, where me and Dustin debate the top 6 stories in small business news for 3 minutes apiece. Dustin, you want to tell them a little bit about the non-corporate network and what we stand for and what we're doing?
Non-corporate network. Well, it's we just try to start a channel that has news or content related to entrepreneurs, business, and so what we're going to be doing is rolling out more shows under the non-corporate network. With Fox News, CNBC, NBC, all that type of stuff. It's the people are a little bit older than us, Chaz, and that's okay. But I think there's a huge need for maybe a younger group of dudes or dudettes as more shows come under the channel. But just geared towards consumption in today's era rather than just the
People
TV.
are if people are really kind of looking at CNN and MSNBC, these big news channels, and wondering, are they feeding me the real unfiltered news, or is this something that I can trust? And so we're here to tell you that everything that we put out on this show is 100% trustworthy. Despite Dustin's best efforts, usually my take is what you should listen to. So you can tune him out. But without further ado, I think we're ready to dive into it with our first story. Dustin, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, sounds good. So it was just announced Charles Schwab announced a merger with TD Ameritrade. It's a $26 billion combination merger and acquisition between these two companies. And for those of you that aren't familiar, Charles Schwab, obviously a big name. They've got brick and mortar stores. They've got a team of brokers across the country. So this is a big deal. Dustin, what do you think about this merger? And do you think that this is infringing on, it got through the antitrust policies. It's been approved. So it's going to happen. I just don't see a lot of competitors in this space outside of, Schwab and Ameritrade as it is.
Yeah, you basically just hit the nail on the head. I don't really know of two other more household names whenever it comes to the financial sector.
Yeah.
So kind of wondering if a monopoly was created on the other end. Whenever you and I talk with Cole and a few other people. People a little bit younger. They don't really know these names, and it's more of the Stash, Robinhood, which they've been quickly building out the ability to buy stocks, ETFs, more of the retirement planning, which is exactly what Charles Schwab and those other companies do. So even though it created a monopoly, I think as time goes on, a younger generation is going to come up that these two names might not even mean anything. So
It's an obsolete monopoly. Yeah.
An obsopoly.
Give it 10 years. No millennial wants to walk into Charles Schwab and get rated by their percentages and all of the different commissions that they have for their agents. Nowadays it's all at our fingertips. Like you mentioned, Robinhood, I can go in and see analyst predictions and crowdsource commentary, news stories about each of these stocks. It's something where, you're going to need to combine as much as you can because it's a dying industry, I think, compared to the world of Robinhood. But who knows? Maybe they'll come out and create an app that's kind of a competitor to those. So I think that'd be the best way for them to position this merger if they want to kind of stay viable in millennials' eyes.
Yeah, and I think for this thing to really take off and be a thing of the future, I think, as you mentioned, I think they need to step up their app game. That's why so many people on the younger age love Robinhoods and Stash apps and stuff like that, because you can buy and trade and plan all on your phone.
Right.
You don't need to go into a location.
Yep.
talk to someone, as bad as that sounds,
Yep.
but I mean, that's the way the world is going. Just being able to
Right.
do it on my own. If I need resources, they're all within the app. So I mean, there's education, there's trainings,
Right.
there's all that type of stuff. But basically, all your customer service, your execution, all of that happens within the app. So I mean, it'll be interesting to
Yep.
see what value they bring to the market to continue to take market share, or
Right.
is it a monopoly that's created that has already kind of started down the downward
100%.
trend?
I mean, think about the profitability too. I mean, they're paying for real estate, they're paying for staff in there. I mean, your margins are going to triple by, moving to an online play. But
Yep.
yeah.
Cool. On to our next story. So LinkedIn, they've come up a couple of times in recent weeks. They've been stepping up their ad game quite a bit, and so they've rolled out some new features when it comes to retargeting. And so basically, what you can do is if you post a video, you can target people based off of if they've watched 25, 50, 75, or 100% of the video. They have lead ads where literally you click on the ad, fill out information, and send it off. You don't even have to drive someone to a landing page for them to fill out a form. They gave the ability to retarget people based off of those who opened it and didn't submit it, along with those who have submitted it. They've also been working on their publisher connections. And so a lot of what can happen on LinkedIn the ads have to serve on LinkedIn. They have a small audience network, but they've been working on increasing their partnerships so that they can serve ads all around the internet. Basically, to put things in perspective, Google, they have reached to up to, I think it's 86% of the world's internet where they can place ads, where LinkedIn is nowhere near that. And so they're working on better targeting capabilities along with extending your messaging outside of LinkedIn. What are your thoughts?
Well, congratulations. You've opened up 20% of the market with your retargeting platform. The other thing I see is that we talk about this, but I got a couple points for you, Dustin. I got a couple points for
Let's
you.
hear 'em.
One thing is if you're talking about an average CPM being $80 plus, then when you talk about retargeting, those numbers are only going to jump up even higher. So this is a premium expense that doesn't necessarily give you better results. And on top of that, I would say that in terms of the engagement that's generated and the eyeballs that are on LinkedIn, in terms of like engaged eyeballs with a CMO or somebody that you'd really want to be targeting with these type of ads, I'm not convinced that they're spending time on LinkedIn engaging with content and clicking through ads. They're busy. They have things to do. They're not on Facebook. They're definitely not over on LinkedIn just tapping and liking stuff and talking to their friends. I think that, for those reasons, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because you're paying such a high premium and you're not necessarily going to get their attention. So, I think it's a risk. I mean, I like the fact that they're building a more robust network and trying to compete. And I think it makes sense with Microsoft and Bing that they have a little bit more firepower. But I think that it's a feeble attempt compared to what's already existing with Google and Facebook.
All good points if we're in 1960, but we have data that we can look at, and I always love that argument. Yeah, but the CPMs are higher. Well, usually you get what you pay for. So even though it costs 4 times as much to reach someone, if the conversion rate is 4 times stronger, at the end of the day, it's what is the cost per lead, using your CRM and analytics to see are these leads turning into revenue. And rather than what does it cost to reach someone, what does it cost to acquire a new customer? And that's the number that you should be looking at, which that happens more often on LinkedIn. And so I appreciate your commentary, but like I said, 40 years too late. Cool. On to the next one. So U.S. retail sales, in-store sales, they're expected to decline by 10% for the overall year 2020, all while e-commerce looks to be up 18%. The original forecast of e-commerce was about 13%, so it accounts for about half of the decline in store. With everything going on, social distancing and everything, I mean, just the continued expansion of e-commerce as we move forward. I mean, I get excited for it because, I mean, I don't like going to the store. I like to be able to just buy online and get it. But what are your thoughts on these numbers?
Shame on you, Dustin, for misleading the people like you're doing. You come at them with the headline. I thought we were doing this show to not be CNN, and you're out here hitting them with this headline and not telling them the full story. Let me go ahead and tell you the full story, people. Retail accounts for $4.89 trillion in revenue. E-commerce accounts for, let's see, 709 billion. So it pales in comparison to the revenue generated by retail. I understand that the trends are moving in these directions and we're going more towards online. But the bottom line is that 18% dip in, was that 18% you said dip
Mm-hmm.
in retail accounts for much more percent than the increase by 13% in e-commerce. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that we talk about e-commerce being the way of the future, but we know how slowly things move and adoption and customer adoption moves in today's world. And coronavirus hasn't stopped retail. The racial injustices haven't stopped retail. So that's my 2 cents. I just want to make sure we're all informed. Don't let Dustin brainwash you into
Yeah.
thinking something.
And I love your 2 cents, but again, and I do appreciate that you said you see the trend, and that's what's happening. Is the trend is happening because remember, at one point, more people owned horses for transportation than cars, but eventually that changed. If you're not preparing for the future, you're going to be that guy that is stuck with 100 horses while everyone's buying cars. So I mean, it's. I hear you that it is a small percentage of the overall retail commerce, but it is a growing trend, and eventually it will overtake in-store transactions and commerce if nothing can change. I think there's a lot that can be done to change that, but I think you get stuck in what does right now look like rather than what's trending, and you'll be that horse car lot essentially while everyone's looking for a car.
Oh gosh, I mean, I think that you're the writing's on the wall. People like convenience. People will pay for convenience. But yeah, the stimulus dollars tell a different story of what the government understands is to be the bigger businesses that need the money in the recovery. And so, I think we all need to be aware that 18% drop is big, and we need to figure out ways to stimulate the retail side of things until we can get to this dream that Dustin has of being all fully autonomous, and who knows, maybe 20 years from now.
Cool.
All right, on to our next story. So I thought this was interesting. This is kind of just a fun story. There's a artist, a musician that his name's Chet. What is his name? Chet Baker, and it's funny because he came out and was accused of impersonating. Well, not accused. He changed his name on Twitter to Donald J. Trump, and then put out a very controversial tweet, like impersonating him. It was kind of a satire, and we've seen this done in the past. The post went viral, and all of a sudden, Twitter removed his verification, condemned his account, and so. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Is this infringing our First Amendment rights? I know, freedom of speech versus freedom of Twitter fingers. There seems to be some kind of disconnect. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on the freedom of speech, but when you start changing your name and impersonating someone else, that's called defamation, which that's not good. I mean, I feel like removing a check mark might not even be enough of I guess punishment. I mean, but it's I don't know. It's tough because granted you have the freedom of speech, you can say whatever you want, but I think as soon as you start looking like someone else, that's when I think you start crossing the line. How you handle that, I'm not sure.
So
It's above my pay grade.
Should we shut down SNL and every other satirical outlet that has impersonated Donald Trump? Because I've seen
Very
shows on
valid
Net.
point. For once, I agree
I've
with you
seen
there.
shows on Netflix where they have a animated version of Donald Trump, and they're literally just roasting him for 30 minutes straight. So if we're gonna remove comedy and humor and satire from the equation, then I guess you can't sell a Donald Trump mask or a Barack Obama mask or anything anymore if you're gonna impersonate somebody. If according to the premise that you're putting out there, Dustin.
Yeah, no, I mean it's interesting. I think it's a matter of how you define each situation, which I think is tough. So I mean, SNL, you can clearly see that that's not them. Whenever you see a handle on Twitter, I mean, you can't see who's behind it. So I mean, two different scenarios. I see where you're reaching at, but I'm not quite fully there with you. I mean, I think it's a case by case. Again, if they're on TV, you can see them. You could tell that it's not him or anyone else. If it's behind a social platform, you can't really tell. I mean, if they update their profile picture, have the check mark, have the name, I mean, there's no way to really tell. I guess you can click on it and go look at past tweets. But to your point, I think there's a lot to discuss whenever it comes to this. What's right, what's wrong, what is freedom of speech, what is defamation. I think there's a lot that needs to maybe be brought to the table in terms of conversations.
Social media has created a whole new pipeline of communication that is nonverbal but still verbal, and so it's interesting to see what's happening there. And yeah, I mean, I bring this up all the time. You got to have policy and a precedent set in order to be able to enforce it. And when it's just gray area, then you're going to cause a lot of outrage, and there's going to be people sitting on both sides. So yeah. Are we at time on that one?
Yes, sir.
Sweet. Another win in the books for me. All right, moving on to our next one. An NYU report came out and offered a plan for content moderation. So I believe that we talked about a story a couple weeks back with Facebook in a walkout that they had in terms of boycotting Facebook's stance on the injustices going on. Also, as a part of that, there was a $52 million lawsuit by the third-party companies and freelancers that are doing content moderation for Facebook because they're exposed to really the darkest things on the internet. They're responsible for moderating things that are very dicey in terms of should they be allowed on the platform or not. And I mean, this kind of plays off of the last story we just talked about. But $52 million lawsuit. These people are getting paid about $28,000 a year. They don't really receive any health benefits currently, and there's just not enough people. I mean, you're sitting at your desk for 8 to 10 hours a day going through content. There's just not enough people with how many people are on social media compared to the amount of moderators there are. And so the plan actually calls for doubling the workforce of moderators. It calls for adding moderators in different countries so that the different kind of language dialects are consistent with the content that's being moderated. Some of this stuff, these people aren't even speaking the language of the content they're moderating. How are you going to moderate that? And then, the third thing is obviously increasing the health benefits and really the mental health benefits of being one of these moderators. But, this is an interesting new job role. And be able to solve this whole problem. It takes a human eyes to have some logic and some understanding around each of these pieces of content they're looking at. But what do you think about this plan? What do you think about content moderation in general and what needs to change?
Yeah, I mean, I think content moderation is a good thing. I mean, just like the last story, it's easy to for things to get lost, and there needs to be something in place to kind of moderate. That being said, I mean, I can't really speak to the annual wage that they receive, but I do think that there's something to be said about the mental side of things, the health side of things. I mean, I hope they get extended vacations. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I think there's more on the outside of the pay, the benefits that can come with the job. I mean, as you mentioned, they're looking at some pretty dark stuff. It's all the terrorist stuff, and it's just a lot of bad stuff. And so you're constantly just 8 hours a day looking at negativity, and that really could play a huge or put a huge impact on just your mental state in general. So I think one, it's good that there's more of an effort to do moderation. Two, I think really need to focus on the how we can improve the mental side of things. Another thing to maybe think about is who is this third party entity. I think as I was reading through the story, it seems like even though it is for Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg is the one that created it, hired the people, so it's almost like Facebook is the moderator of Facebook, which it's tough to police yourself.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on that. It's kind of like a president assigning a Supreme Court justice. They're going to pick somebody that has the same viewpoints and ideals. And while they're not the one that's saying, oh, I'm making these decisions, they've appointed somebody that's going to make the same decision as them. So it's, it's dicey.
Yeah. I love where it's headed, but on to our next story. So Microsoft they're actually replacing employees because of AI. So there were 30 journalists or reporters that were laid off because their main job was to take different stories in different industries, aggregate them, and create columns from them, essentially taking data from one source to another, and that is it. And Microsoft has figured out a way to use AI to do that. We've talked about it a lot. I think I think it's good that AI is doing this, just taking content from one place and putting it to another. It's not exciting and probably not what someone dreams about doing whenever they're 6 years old. I think there's more opportunity out there to use your creative brain and do other things that make you feel good, have a bigger impact on the world. But I have a feeling I know exactly what your thoughts are, but let's
soften the blow as much as you can, Dustin. Just soften the blow. This is something that is going to happen. This is just the beginning. People all too often look at businesses and their profitability and go, oh, they got to get more customers, or they got to get more people to pay for things in order to grow their bottom line. No, you can also replace people with AI and become much more profitable. 30 people getting laid off times 50 grand, you're putting that money in your pocket. So I think that this is just the start. And when you see a company like Microsoft and Billy G pulling this move, it's only a matter of time until everybody else is pulling the move. And so I look at it and I go, it's funny that all the tech entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, they all want a universal base income. You want to know why? Because they know they're gonna fire half of their staff, because the staff that they hired created algorithms to run themselves out of a job. And so that's baseline what's going to happen. And I think we have a really big problem because the government is looking at, okay, we're going to optimize the economy based off unemployment rate. But then you see companies like Microsoft that's leading the charge in terms of industry, and they're firing people because they don't need them anymore. And so they're optimizing their business based on the bottom line and profitability as opposed to how many people they're hiring. And it's just going to cause a lot of friction until, these big tech companies can align with the policies that we have at the U.S. government.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I always go back to, there were a lot of people making cars, making shoes, making shirts, making things before the Industrial Revolution. When that happened, a lot of those jobs went away. But guess what? There were a ton of jobs created. Same thing here. There's a lot of jobs that we don't even know what they are. They're going to be created from this tech revolution, essentially. And that being said, humanity has a funny way of, if companies are laying all these people off, pretty soon people aren't going to have money to buy things. So companies will figure something out to, hey, we need people working so that they have money to spend so that we can make revenue. And so, there's a couple things at play. There's going to be so many jobs that open up that we didn't even know about. There's going to be, if there is a depletion in the workforce and no one has money, no one's gonna be able to buy things. These companies are gonna figure out a way to reverse that trend as well. Innovation is good. I think I'm excited for it, but only time will tell.
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing I disagree with is the companies aren't going to be doing this. It's going to come down to the government saying, give us more money because you're making way more money. And so I think that that's going to have to be part of it. They need to be injecting some of these profits back into the government in order to, increase the livelihood and well-being and quality of life for the people that are in the country. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think this is something that is going to continue to be a growing point of discussion. But no, that was fun. That was fun. I think I checked off the box of 6 wins this week. This is awesome. I'm really crushing.
Yeah, that's an unbiased opinion.
Well, thank you guys for being with us again. Like I said, we are streaming live across the entire globe, all 7 continents. We're up on Mars. We're on the moon. The satellites bouncing off, sending us all over the entire universe. So we're excited that you tuned in. And again, you're watching the Non-Corporate Network. This is Entreprenews. And, I just want to throw a quick shout out over to Avantage for their support of us. They're also on the moon. They're also all across the solar system, helping small businesses to fill excess capacity. If you don't have the cash, but you need a service, do it on trade. And even if you have the cash, keep it in your pocket, do it on trade. Sign up with Avantage, get $150 for free. You get $150 to just put your email and phone number in and get an account set up. It's a steal. So check them out. But thank you guys for watching. Dustin, do you have anything you want to say?
No, thank you so much for tuning in. I mean, as always, it was a blast, Chaz.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. I'll be back in the studio with you on Friday, bright and early. We will see you guys then. Thank you for tuning in. Again, if you have ideas for new stories, something that comes across your desk you want to share with us, please do so. We always like debating. Thank you for everybody that's tuning in and helping us to make this a reality. So with that, again, my name is Chaz Vandemotter.
Dustin Trout.
You have been watching Entreprenews. We'll see you guys on Friday.
See you Friday.